Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. I'm really happy to be with you. Can you just let me know in the comments if you can hear me? Okay. I hope you can hear me. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Jordan. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. This is very exciting. This is the first live stream webinar from the TEFL Academy, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. So, my name is Ryan, and I've been a teacher, manager, director of studies, school owner, um, just about everything, mostly a teacher for about 17 years. So I'm going to try to pass on some tips for you today. We're going to be talking about things to consider when you're applying for an EFL job. So hello to everyone. So something about me, I'm actually kind of near Oxford in the UK at the moment. It's a lovely sunny day. So I'd like to hear more from where you guys are from. If you can put that in the comments. I've worked in the UK, I've worked in Poland for quite a long time. I've taught people from all around the world, from Europe, from South America, from Africa, the Middle East, just about everywhere. So please tell me, where are you at the moment? So Abby's here in Scotland. It's shockingly sunny in Scotland. I'm glad to hear that. So Mark's from London and the Philippines, Viv. Okay. Nicole from Jamaica. I bet it's very, very sunny in Jamaica. Sarah's from Italy. That's fantastic. And South Africa too. Lovely. Great. I absolutely love the fact that we can do this from people from all over the world sharing their ideas and having some fun as well, learning something new. Azerbaijan, fantastic. So we've got a really good mix today. That's really good. Okay, so we're going to be talking about things that you should bring up in a job interview. So hopefully this will come in really handy when you start looking for a job. When it comes to job interviews, I always say that it works both ways. That you're being interviewed for the job, but also you are interviewing a potential job as well. The people that are your potential employers. So I think you have to be happy with the situation as well. It's not only a one-way door. Okay. So I think what we'd do, we're going to get straight into it now. And then after, there's going to be a question and answer session. So if you've got any great questions, you can put them in the chat, but maybe just hold off for now so I can find them easier after we've gone through the presentation. Okay. All right. Let's get going. So I want you to think about what would be a perfect job for you. Just think about that for a second. Maybe close your eyes and imagine what a perfect job would be. Um, it can depend on the location. Would it be working from home, or would it be in an office or a classroom, a school, working with other people? Would you like to work with people from different countries and different backgrounds? Perfect job is different for everybody. So have a think about that. We might come back to that later in the Q&A. What would be a perfect job for you? What would a typical day look like? Would it be working in the mornings or the evenings? Are you a morning person? I'm not a morning person. I think I'd prefer an evening job. But what would you need for your perfect job? What you need from your perfect job? Would it be the location, the good salary, working with lots of interesting people? Would it be a very intensive job, or would it be a kind of more relaxed vibe for the place that you're working? Just think about that. What factors would you need to consider? There could be a lot of different variables in your decision to choose the job. It might be that you need to go to a certain country, for example, or you like to sample a specific culture or learn a language, a specific language. So, in order to think about these questions, we've got 20 questions that will help make your decision a bit easier, hopefully. So, we think about, do you want to actually go and work abroad, or is it something you want to do in your own country? Is there a country that you've always wanted to visit or you've always wanted to work in? Hmm. Which countries are on your bucket list? The ones that you've never visited but you've always wanted to. Maybe that would be a part of your decision making. What would the culture like be in the place where you want to work? Where would you stay? Would you be staying with some family, perhaps, or would it be on your own? Would it be with your own family, or your partner, your boyfriend, or your girlfriend? You have to think about these things, especially the food where you're going. What kind of food will you be eating? What would the public transport be like? Will you be driving in that country? There's so many factors for you to think about. So there is some interesting comments here. I'm just going to save those for later. Camille says the perfect jobs would be inspiring. Yeah, I totally agree. Which countries and which cultures would inspire you? Um, the thing to think about is you have to be comfortable in any country where you go and work. You have to be comfortable with the language, with the culture, with the weather, the climate of that place. Maybe you already speak the language a little bit. How long would you stay in that place? Is it a short term project or plan, or are you thinking about something a little bit longer? Okay, these are all different things that you need to think about. For example, if you have a specific diet, will that be possible in the country you're going to? Would the food that you need be available there? Hmm. So, as I mentioned, would you be traveling alone or traveling with your family, with your children? Will you need to find a school for your children? What ages are your children if you are traveling with your family? Of course, we haven't mentioned much about the salary yet, have we, Bernadette? Um, but satisfaction is definitely a factor as well. We need to be satisfied completely. A job is very important, takes up a lot of your time in your life. So we need to be happy at work and satisfied. Absolutely. Caitlin also mentions the salary. We'll get to that in a moment. But it's very important that you are comfortable and happy in the climate and the culture where you're going to be working. And your family have to be happy as well, of course. What attracts you to a place? Maybe it is the food, maybe it is the hot weather or the cold weather. Maybe it's a completely different culture than you're used to in your current country. What's the cost of living? Some countries obviously have a different cost of living than others. What would be your budget? Would you need money to set up first? Deborah mentions, yeah, what about the age factors? What do you mean by that, Deborah? Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Monica, thanks for your compliment. I love this t-shirt too. What would you do when you're not working? What are the options for a social life in that country? Would it be a free choice that what you do? Would it be restricted in some way? What are the social norms and culture in that country? Would it be will you be able to travel freely? What would be involved in that? If you wanted to do work online in that country as well, what would there be any kind of restrictions? So there's lots of things to think about here. A lot of research to do before you travel. Deborah's talking about an age restriction. Okay, we'll come back to that, Deborah. So let's talk a little bit about contracts. So contracts come in all shapes and sizes. I've worked in many different types of school, and every single contract is different in terms of the details, the salary, of course, the type of contract is it short term? Is it renewable? Is it a fixed term contract? Is it a kind of hourly contract, or is it more like a salary contract? These are the things that you have to think about. The working hours, is it a fixed number of hours that you have to work? Is it a minimum or a maximum hours that you have to work? Will you get paid for any admin time as well? Remember, it's not only about the teaching, and you need some time for planning your lessons. You need some time for administration. Would there be any other responsibilities that you have for to be part of a social program, for example? Would you be expected to take students out after their daily lessons are finished? These are all very important questions. Is there going to be any pre-planned syllabus that you work from, or would you be expected to make all of your own materials? Many places where I've worked, I've been expected to make my own materials. So you have to go research those materials, make sure they're appropriate for the level and the age that you're working with. In other schools, there is a very rigid, pre-planned syllabus. If you're teaching online, that might be the case. All of the slides and presentations might be ready for you, or you might have a bit of freedom to inject your own personality into your lessons. Will there be someone to help you guide you through the contract? Will there be a mentor or a kind of someone there, like a buddy, to help you when you first arrive in that country, to help you with the legal, the paperwork, and so on? Okay. What about the location where you work? Is it just one school or many schools, many different locations where you might be expected to work? You might be shifted from one place to the other, or you might be in a central place. In some schools, you might have a classroom assistant, for example, someone who speaks the native language, who's there to help you. Um, will there be any kind of different class groups, different types of teaching that you might have to do? For example, would it be like ESP, English for specific purposes? Would it be business English? Would it be conversation? Would it be exam classes that you need to help prepare your students for? Um, will there be any benefits for you as well? Um, will there be observations of your lessons? Schools typically will be observing new teachers, especially when you start teaching, and they'll give you feedback on your work as well, on your lesson plans, on your teaching. You might get the opportunity to observe other teachers as well, and this you can ask about this in your interview. It's very important. Peer observation, so you can pick up some really good techniques and tips, and see how other teachers do things differently. So also very importantly as well, you should ask about accommodation. Will they help you when you're first moving? Will they provide accommodation? Is this part of the contract as well? Perhaps they might include language lessons for you, which would be great. It's very important to integrate yourself into the culture where you're going, and try to put yourself in the student's position as well, so you can see what it's like to learn a foreign language. What is the medical situation? Do you need medical insurance, for example? What are the hospitals like? What are the emergency services like? What is the local public transportation? Um, what is the infrastructure like in the country where you want to go? Is that a factor for you? Um, was there might even be a performance bonus for um, getting a certain amount of students to pass exams, for example. This might be also part of your negotiations when you talk to a potential employer. Flights as well. Yeah. So many companies might include this as part of your package. They might include the flights, the initial flight there, as part of your compensation, your salary, for example. Let's talk a little bit about agencies. So, if you do join an agency, you need to be aware of what their commission is. How will they pay you? Will it be a check? Will it be bank transfer? Something else? Um, is it negotiable? Is it a set period for your commission payment? Will they give you assistance in application for a visa if you need one? Okay, very important. There's visa visa accommodations in different countries vary quite a lot sometimes. So you need to do your research before you travel. What is the location of the place? Is it in a central area in the country? Is it by the coast? What do you prefer? Is it in a urban or a rural area? How will that affect you? How will that affect your family and your travel plans? Will it be very far away from your country, or do you need to stay quite close? How many students will be in your school? Will you have small classes? Is there a maximum class size? Some classrooms might be very big, or you might be lucky enough to have smaller groups where you can really focus on the students. What kind of courses? As I mentioned, that there might be conversation, business, legal, medical English, engineering English, and you might be expected to help with those lessons as well. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Give me a sign to tell me that you can hear me. Do the students have any say or any choices to make? Are you free to talk and negotiate a syllabus with your students? It's always great if you can have some flexibility in that. Thanks, you can hear me. Great, wonderful. Okay, what else? So let's just pause for a moment. Let's just take some time to visualize what your class might look like. There are so many different jobs out there, so many different types of jobs. What will your perfect class look like? How old are your students going to be? Are they going to be very expressive students, or are they going to be more reserved? What language level would you be comfortable teaching? Are you confident to go and teach upper intermediate or advanced learners, or are you expecting your students not to understand any English at all? These are important things. When I first started teaching, I was teaching all kinds of different levels. In one lesson, I had a proficient level student, and next I had an elementary level student. So you have to be kind of ready for anything, really, depending on where you go and work. You might be only focusing on one level, depending on the school where you work. Will they be young learners? Will they be very, very young? Will they be retired? What do you prefer? How does it look for you? Will it be one-to-one teaching or small groups, maybe 2-1? Or will it be a huge group where you can have lots of different kinds of interactions? That's an interesting question. Do you think it's easier to teach A1 versus C1, C2? I'll hold that thought. I'll get back to that. Thanks for the question. So there are obviously lots of practical things that we need to talk about here. What kind of documents do you need? Obviously, a passport, a visa, maybe health certificates. You might need to prove your qualifications, for example, your TEFL certificate, perhaps. You might need a degree, you might not need a degree. It really depends on where you're going and what kind of school you're going to be teaching at. These days, we have to think about vaccination status as well. There might be some travel restrictions there. Do you need some police checks, for example, DBS checks in the UK, like criminal checks before you start work? And other kind of documents that you might need. So get yourself prepared. Get your certificates together. Make scans of them if you need to. You can send them out before you go to the school, depending on where you're going. A good tip that I might pass along is I put all of my documents in the cloud. So even if I do lose one, they're always there for me. Scan them on your phone. It's really easy to do that now. And make sure that you've got all the documents you need. Of course, financial considerations. Will you need to open a bank account where you're going? This is vitally important. Is it easy to open a bank account in the country, your destination country? Will you need to pay a lot of tax where you're going as well? Will you need to register? Will you need to set up as a self-employed person, which is quite common in some countries? In many places where I've taught, I needed to issue an invoice In other places, it was very easy. I got paid straight into my bank account, no problems. You know, there might be a lot of administration. You might need to fill out a weekly pay sheet, for example. You may need to buy medical insurance, as we've talked about. Maybe some property insurance as well, travel insurance. Lots of financial consideration. So, Mohammed, you've got a really interesting question about teaching online as well. We'll come back to that later. All right. So there are many, many, many things to think about there. I hope that you've managed to just visualize your perfect school, the perfect country, your perfect students. And it's very exciting, isn't it? When we think about jumping on that plane to go off and teach in a new culture, a foreign language, to learn, meet new friends. What a great adventure. Let me tell you, I wish I'd started a long time ago. I started teaching quite late in my career. It was a kind of a second career, but I wish I'd discovered that when I was very much younger than I am now. Believe you me, I would have traveled the whole world. I still might do that. Who knows? So it's a great opportunity. But do your research. Before I traveled to go and work in Poland, for example, I done a lot of research. I looked at different places. I looked at different schools. I looked at pay rates. I looked at the language abilities in the country in different areas. So a lot of planning involved. I'm sure that you'll plan very diligently and you'll be ready to hit the ground running when you go and go and teach. Teaching is a wonderful thing to do. It really helps people in their life. You make a big difference. So my advice is to embrace that. Do your research, find out as much as you can about the place where you're going, and everything will be much easier for you. Okay, so I think we're going to the Q&A. Before we get into that, could you just put into the comments where you would like to teach? Where are your dream destinations? I've got a hankering to go and teach in a very nice hot country. I'm getting bored of the British winter. Salime would like to go and teach in Germany. Yeah, good destination. Tokyo, Jordan says, yes, absolutely. I would love to go and teach in Japan. South Africa, yeah, yeah. All of these great destinations. I'm so jealous for you guys. I wish I could go and start all over again, but it's never too late as well. Many teachers start teaching at all kinds of different ages, and that it's a new lease of life. So it's all good. Okay, so I think what we'll do, I'll just come back to some of your questions now, and I'll start from the beginning. Julia says, "Will this be recorded?" Yes, it will be recorded and uploaded, I believe. So watch out for that. Um, I hope I get this pronunciation right. Jo says, Jo Andre, for example, I like learning new cultures and I like traveling. Yes, absolutely. This is one of the greatest things about the opportunity to go and teach in a different country. Andrea says, I like to teach in Portugal where my family is from. Okay, so that might be a consideration. You might want to go and visit some friends and family that you have in a different country. You already know someone there, so it will be very, very handy. especially for accommodation and getting to know the culture, the transport, um, maybe the language as well. So yeah, Portugal is a lovely place as well. That's on my list too. It's a big list. So Caitlin says, prefer job will be on a salary and must inspire me to like it. Yes, yeah. Well, the salary is good because increases your stability, your security. You know exactly what you're going to get. Um, on the other hand, hourly pay might be what you're looking for, more flexible maybe. Some weeks you want um, to work less hours. Maybe you want to work part time. Maybe if it's an online job, you can work around something else that is important for you. Maybe you're studying at the moment. So it really depends. But I agree, Caitlin. You have to be inspired. I think life is very short and you need to enjoy the job that you're doing and whatever you're doing, you need to enjoy that. But salary is important too. Deborah says, what are the age factors? And yeah, there was a follow up to that question. Thank you, Debbie. Is there an age restriction in certain countries? In terms of teaching, um, I think it depends, honestly. In my experience, you need to be, well, certainly um, age 17, I would say, is the youngest, I would say, in my experience. In some countries, you might have to be an adult. And if you're an adult, you might have to have that police check that we mentioned before. So it really, really does depend. Um, I hope not. I hope not. There wouldn't be any upper age restrictions if that's what you were thinking about. Um, there shouldn't be any restriction to age and knowledge, no matter how old you are. If you're a great teacher, then that's what's important, and you've got a great life experience as well to go along with the language side of that. Remember, language is not just the grammar and the words and the pronunciation. It's nothing without culture and experience as well. So you can bring a lot of your own life and your own culture and experience along with your teaching knowledge as well. Great question. Yeah, great point, Linda. I would also consider how safe it is, and that's something to factor in if you're traveling alone. Is it a safe country? What is the security like in that country? Unfortunately, we have to think at the moment about some areas around the world that it wouldn't be the easiest place and not the securest place in the world to go at the moment. Um, it's definitely something that we have to think about. And if you are traveling alone, yeah, very important um, to make sure that you feel comfortable and safe in that place where you want to go and teach. Yeah, absolutely. Very good point, Linda. So this is a really interesting question. Thank you. Do you think it's easier to teach A1, which is a very beginner level, or C2, which is basically coming close to native level speaking? I don't know. I think it depends on the person. I personally, as a new teacher, I remember I think I prefer to teach the more advanced learners because when you teach younger levels, you need to be very clear about the grammar and you need to keep that teacher talk time really down low and grade your language. I'm sure you can all tell me what grading your language is because you've learned that on your course. So to not complicate your instructions, keep things very simple, understandable For example, the classic thing to say for lower levels would be, what does it mean? And you can't ask this question because your students won't have the language to tell you what it means. You need to check in different ways, concept checking questions. So all of these important factors come into play when you're teaching lower levels. If you're teaching higher levels, then you've got a bit more freedom. You can have a bit more colloquial language, a bit more advanced vocabulary, idioms, and things like that are a lot more fun to teach as well. And authentic language as well, very important. If you've got a chance to teach authentic language, language from the internet, from newspapers, movies, songs, very important question to ask during your interview as well. Do you have some freedom to use authentic material? I would say. So to answer the the question, it depends. What would you prefer to teach? Is the question. I think it's different for everybody, but a really good question. Cindy says, "Can you choose the level you want to teach?" Oh, that's a great question. Hmm. I I think that would be something to ask during the interview stage, because in many cases, in my case at least, I've had to teach many different levels. Um, I think it does depend on the type of school where you're going to teach. It might be that you're teaching very young learners and they're all at a certain level, and that will be you coming in to teach that specific group and those specific students. It would be great. Then you can think, oh, I've really preferred to teach um, pre-intermediate students because they make so much progress at that level before they reach intermediate level, where the progress is a little bit steeper. They reach a kind of plateau of their language learning. But beginner learners, they have a very, very nice curve. They learn a lot in the beginning, I find. Um, but I would definitely ask that. Cindy, drop me a comment. Which language level would you prefer to teach? Do we have the option to say how many students we want to teach? Oh, that's a great question. Um, I think in many cases, probably no, because the school will have a certain policy. Um, they might have a maximum or minimum class size. In certain countries, the class size might be quite big. So I don't know. If you're lucky, you can say, I only want to teach a maximum of 6 students in my class. Um, I think that might be rare. I might be wrong about that, but you can certainly ask the question. But in my experience, I think no, the class size is the class size. Uh, but do your research is what I would say. Is the school you're going to, does it have a certain policy? Um, 16 or 12 students in the class and that's it? Are you being brought in to only teach very small classes? So, yeah, definitely ask that question, I would say. And Mohammed's got a very interesting point here about teaching online. Yeah, a bachelor's degree. Yeah, so I think it does vary quite a lot. So it's definitely worth checking if this is going to be a requirement where you teach. It really depends on the country and the school where you're going to work. Um, many places around the world do not require a degree, um, and the TEFL Academy can certainly help you with that when choosing your destination. But that's definitely something to think about before you travel. Yeah, good question, Mohammed. I think it does help if you if you can demonstrate that you've learned some methodology, you've got a good qualification before you go out there. You can prove that you're experienced. In some cases, there might be, as part of the interview process, there might be like a sample lesson that you might have to give. You might have to provide a video of a sample of your teaching. There might be some questions like that before you go and start working. Speaking of being an older teacher, is being over 50 a problem for countries in Asia like India and Nepal? That's a great question. I'll be very honest, I don't know in these specific countries, but maybe someone else can answer that in the chat. Does anyone else have that experience? I hope not. I don't think it would be, as I mentioned. It all depends on you, your character, your experience, your knowledge, and your life experience. This, you can tell some great stories. You can tell your students about very important cultural things and literature and about your travels as well. So my answer is I hope not. Sorry, I can't be more useful. But let's have a look at some of more of the comments. How about online teaching? Where should we look for a job? Okay, good question. So if you start with the TEFL Academy, that's a good place to start. And there are many great portals and websites for online teaching and for not offline teaching as well. So I would start with a good old Google search, TEFL jobs, and I can mention a few, like TEFL Academy is a very good one. And there's one that will have a good selection of both online and offline work, and it tells you which countries are available, which jobs in which countries are available. So also word of mouth as well, ask around, ask on social media. There are lots of groups that you can join and ask about jobs, and there are Facebook groups, for example, and other social media platforms which specialize in offering jobs online. And ask your fellow students on your course as well. Ask your tutors. Patty says, could you suggest a good place to look for what companies are hiring? So yeah, a similar question. So if you know the names of schools in your destination countries, you can go directly to their websites. There might be specific job portals for that country as well, but I would say definitely the TEFL Academy, TEFL.com, TEFL. Well, I'm not going to say other names, but I'd definitely start with the TEFL Academy. They will actually help you a lot to choose your destination, I would say, Patty. It depends which country you're looking for. Some countries are more popular than other, and they've got very good infrastructure and websites for looking for a job. Oops. So Megan says, how can I find a job teaching in line if most jobs require experience? Okay, that's a great question. Yeah, it is a bit of a chicken and egg situation, isn't it? To get a great job, you need experience. To get experience, you need to get a job. So what do we do? So what I would suggest is get some experience, teach friends and family, volunteer, put this on your CV. try to create some experience for yourself, whether that's online or offline, and then you can put that in your CV. And when you come to interview for a job, you can say, "Yeah, I've got some experience, and I've taught at the local refugee center, for example." There are lots of opportunities for that. Um, Teach your friends and family, if you've got some friends that need some help with their English. Um, Join local groups as well. Yeah, you can make your own experience. That's a really good question, Megan. Okay, so Chanel, so do most companies or agencies accept get articulates with this difficulty? I'm not too sure about that. Maybe someone else can help in the comments about that question. I think it varies quite wildly, I would say, in my experience. I'm not too sure, to be honest, about that. Another great question from Christian. Is it true that being a non-native speaker makes it more difficult to find a job? Not in my experience. I think these days it doesn't matter if you're a native speaker, non-native speaker, teacher. Um, there are opportunities for everybody. In actual fact, the benefit is if you're a non-native English speaker, teacher, you've actually learned the language. You've been in the student's position. You've got a very good understanding of the grammar and the vocabulary. It's kind of non-intrinsic. You've had to learn that. Whereas a native speaker has has acquired the language and not necessarily learned it themselves. So there are pluses and minuses on both sides. As a native speaker, um, certain things might come easier. When I become a teacher, I had to relearn the grammar all over again in order to teach the grammar. But as a non-native teacher, you've been through that process before. So I think it really doesn't matter too much these days. And it's been my privilege to work alongside some fantastic non-native teachers. So I would say we uh, we all work together. We add to the student experience. We can work together to make a great learning experience for our students. Peach, would it be possible to be an independent TEFL teacher online, not attached to any agency? Oh, that's great. Yes. Well, the answer is yes, of course. Yeah. Um, you don't need necessarily an agent to start work. You can set up on your own after you get your certificate. You can build a website. You can go out and find your own clients. Um, when you can teach online. I mean, this is obviously you need to put a lot of more work in the beginning with this. If you're good with building websites, if you're good with marketing, it's not always easy to go and find students out there. It might be a long process. It might be a long time before you build up enough clients to make it work. It might be just a part-time thing in the beginning. Whereas on the other side, if you work with an agency or you work with um, a job provider, um, then you've got a selection. You can get work very easily that way, and it's all taken care of you as well. So it's definitely possible. Definitely possible, I would say. Thanks for your question, Peach. Oh, sorry, we've had that question. So I think Wimpy's got a very good question here. How do you find a job that requires experience of just teaching? So I think we covered that before. So you build your own experience, volunteer, friends and family, and so on. So you can put that on your CV. So when it comes to your interview, you've got something to show your potential employees. Vicky says, where can I find current information about the TEFL industry? Well, TEFL Academy website. It's got some great blogs on there. Online, joining groups on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. There are some great websites out there, great bloggers that I would recommend. So if you've been using some of the course books on your course, a lot of the authors have their own blogs. For example, when I was starting to teach, Scott Thornbury was a big inspiration. Jeremy Harmer. These are the kind of the more well-known authors out there. But Sandy Millman is very good. I think it's Sandy Millman. She's very prolific. She has a great blog and great tips. There are great tips, people out there talking about technology as well, using technology in your teaching, which is very handy, obviously, if you want to teach online. Good question. This is an interesting comment. I think that if you don't speak the mother language of your students, try to teach more advanced levels. Yeah, I think we were talking about that as well. So, but of course, it's not necessary to know the language of the country where you're teaching. If you don't know the language of your students, it in some schools they would say absolutely only English only that you can teach in, and you can get the skills to do that. It's entirely possible to know not one single word of the language in the country where you're going to work. TEFL Academy will give you the skills to do that. Keep your teaching time, talk time down, grade your language properly, focus on the MFP. You know what I mean? Give me a good explanation of MFP in the comments if you can. So it's not necessarily important to know the language at all when you go and teach, but really good point. Thank you for that. I'm having difficulties doing my first assignment. Okay, so I think today's Q&A is not really focused on that, but I think you can definitely get some help from your tutors about that and your colleagues on the course, and the TEFL Academy can help you with that one as well. Great question here from Kerry Ann. What is the level of pay online for newly qualified teachers? Wow. Okay. Wow. It can be a very, very big difference depending on the country where it's based from. I've seen rates quite low. I've seen rates down £11 an hour. I've seen rates up to £20, $20 an hour and more, depending on your experience, of course. As a new teacher, I think it's good to shop around, because even newly qualified teachers can get a very good rate as well, depending on the base country and the type of teaching that you're going to be doing, and the type of level and the age of the students as well. So I think obviously with anything in life, the more experience you get, the higher salary or wage you can command. So, but don't sell yourself short, is what I would say. Shop around for the best deal. Thanks, Carrie. That's a really good question. I wanted to just come back to this one from Linda. I think it's harder teaching absolute beginners. Yes, in many ways it is. It's also very, very rewarding. As I said, they absolute beginners or low level students learn very, very quickly. So it's always great to see your students using the language very quickly. But it can be challenging as well, especially for new teachers, and you have to be mm, very controlled, very focused on the grammar and the language point that you're teaching, and not deviate too much, not too many complicated, um, too much complicated language. Grading of language is very important. But absolute beginners, do they really exist? Is there anyone out there that doesn't speak even one or two words in English? I think we can talk about false beginners. So I would say that even a class of absolute beginners will know a little bit of English to start with. So you've got somewhere to start from. You've got a foundation there. But really good point and question from Linda. Just to follow up with that, a really good point here. Grading language is hard for low levels for sure. It can be, but a bit of practice makes perfect, and you'll soon get into the swing of it, I'm sure. Here's a great question from Kata. Is it possible to find relocation opportunities as an English teacher? In answer, I think is yes. I think it's definitely something that is offered by many schools as part of the package. Remember, we were discussing earlier. This is an important question to ask, especially if it's very, very far away and it's not easy to find your own accommodation if the language barrier is there. So definitely, if that's something that you're interested in, I would definitely do your research and what kind of support you might get for relocation as well. Is it possible for them to find um, accommodation for you, especially when you first land? Yeah, very good point. Um, Load shedding about to start in my own. Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. Thanks for joining anyway. Here's a question. Can you teach TEFL in the Netherlands? That's a good question. I think you can teach English anywhere in the world, which is the great thing. In some countries, obviously, the level of English in general is better than other countries. In Scandinavia, in the Netherlands, perhaps in Europe, certain European countries, the level of English, generally speaking, is very good. But there's always opportunities to teach English. Everyone has to start from somewhere, especially young learners. So there's opportunities everywhere, Werner, I would say. Again, do your research. What is the demand for English language teaching in your destination countries? Here's an interesting question. Sorry, let me just find the right question. Apologies. Afrikaans is very useful if you go to the Netherlands. Okay. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. So certain languages might be, if you know a certain foreign language, it might be useful for you in your destination country. Here's a fantastic question. How do we look out for scams? Wow, yeah. Excellent point. So we have to be very, very careful with that. Yeah. There are many badly companies with bad reputations out there, so you have to be very careful of that. Wow, we've come to the end of our webinar. Doesn't time fly? Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure to answer your questions. I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to answer everybody's questions, but I hope you've found this useful. And if you get a moment, we'd really appreciate if you could tell us what you think. I'm always happy to take feedback so I can improve and do better for my next webinar. Thank you so much. And I want to wish you the best of luck for your future careers. I'm sure you're all going to make fantastic teachers. So I'll say goodbye from sunny Oxford and take care. Bye bye.